in-depth, investigative. This is KXAN News Today.
Protests popped up across the country protesting the Trump administration's job cuts, specifically under Elon Musk and DOGE, his government efficiency group. Good morning, I'm Erica Brennis. From the nation's capital to other places such as Wisconsin, Illinois, even South Carolina and here in Austin. This was dubbed the No Kings on President's Day by the 50-51 movement. Elon Musk actually responded on social media to one post about the protests against him and the Trump administration, saying demonstrators, quote, are protesting against the actual democratic will of the people. A similar protest formed at the Texas Capitol grounds. KXAN's Brianna Hollis takes an in-depth look at protest rules in Austin and at the Capitol and how law enforcement prepares for these events.
I have printed over 3,000 flyers and put them all around Austin.
Alexandra is the media liaison for the Austin chapter of 5051, the grassroots effort mobilizing political protests in each state. Monday's demonstration was the second wide-scale event for the group this month.
Second of many. We are just getting started.
With more of these expected, here's some information about the cans and can-nots when it comes to protesting in the city. In general, you don't need a permit to gather on public sidewalks, but you have to follow certain rules, like making sure people can still get by and not blocking driveways or entrances to buildings. The State Preservation Board and Texas Department of Public Safety oversee protests on the Capitol grounds. Austin police handle things if the protest spills off property. On Monday, a group of officers with bikes and ATVs monitored the protests from across the street. According to DPS, you do not need a permit to protest at the Capitol unless you're requesting help with things like electrical access or a sound system. On Monday, Alexandra brought her own megaphone.
I do think that we are going to get bigger and bigger.
Protesters did spill out into the streets this President's Day, and the Austin Police Association says as long as it's not a major traffic issue and organizers are willing to limit their impact on the roads, police will usually help facilitate a peaceful march. And according to law enforcement, Monday's event went off without any issues. Brianna Hollis, KXAN News.
According to 5051's website, another protest is set for March 4th, and we do plan to reach out to the group and law enforcement, and we'll keep you informed.
First warning weather with meteorologist Kristen Curry.
Well, good morning. Let's start with a look at satellite and radar. A ton of cloud cover out there. Not seeing a whole lot picked up on our local radars, but it is possible. We see a few spots of drizzle and fog this morning. Temperatures much milder than what we woke up to yesterday. Widespread 50s out there. And in general, we're going to stay pretty comfortable until that cold front arrives. That happens this evening. So looking at the visibility readings, I'm already starting to see things get worse out toward Lago Vista. We'll probably see this get a little worse before it gets better as we get closer to sunrise, but we're not expecting a whole lot in the way of sunshine to begin with. I think those overcast and cloudy skies will be with us from start to finish. Rain chance starting at about 10% for drizzle, and then that grows to 30% with some actual showers expected this afternoon. But then the cold front arrives, pushes out all that moisture, strong winds, and bitterly cold air follow that cold front. I'm going to show you just how low we go and how bad those wind chills look to be tomorrow morning coming up in your first 24 forecast.
All right, thanks, Kristen. And now the latest on another plane crash involving a regional commuter jet yesterday. A Delta flight out of Minneapolis flipped over upside down as it landed in Toronto. All 80 people on board escaped, though more than a dozen were rushed to nearby hospitals. Jay Gray has more.
The Delta regional jet out of Minneapolis apparently started to have problems during landing at Pearson International Airport in Toronto, skidding across the runway, then rolling over.
My friend rushed there first, and then he said the CRJ is crashed on the runway. So I was like, yeah, I gotta go check it out. And the next thing I saw is basically a plane, the CRJ plane that basically flipped on the runway.
76 passengers and 4 crew members all survived.
First and foremost, there was no loss of life. And this is in due part to our heroic and trained professionals, our first responders at the airport. 17 injured passengers were quickly taken to local area hospitals. At this time, we do not know of any of those passengers having critical injuries.
The right wing was ripped from the plane during the crash.
That's what they're going to look at to start with. Where is that wing and how did it leave the airplane?
Former pilot John Cox says wind gust at the time may have been a contributing factor.
With it being that gusty, I think it's possible the wing may have touched the runway due to a gust. And if that's the case, then the rest of this makes sense. But the recorders are going to show that.
Canadian aviation teams are the lead in an investigation that is just beginning. Jay Gray, NBC News.
And ahead this morning on Today, NBC's Stephanie Gosk will be live at the scene. Tom Costello also looking into air safety coming up this morning. Good morning, 4:38. A live look over a little bit of a hazy sky here in Austin. Kristen Curry is going to have your forecast. Not as chilly today as it is headed our way overnight. So she'll have all of those details and specifics coming up for you so you can prepare for the week ahead. Some laid off federal workers in Texas are now getting their jobs back. 350 employees at the National Nuclear Security Administration, they were laid off late Thursday. These workers handled nuclear weapons programs. One of the hardest hit offices was the Pantex plant, which is near Amarillo, which saw about 30% of the cuts. Those employees work on reassembling warheads. The agency director on Friday issued a memo rescinding all but a handful of those firings. Bike riding while getting a lesson on Black history in Austin. The Black History Bike Ride Group is hosting a community event on Saturday, taking you on a route filled with historic stories and sights that you can see around Austin. It starts at the George Washington Carver Museum at 1 on Saturday afternoon to 3 o'clock. Riders are invited to attend also a 3-film movie screening at 6 in the evening centered on the connections between Black community members and cycling. To get more insight into stories of Black Austinites who were born and raised in East Austin, you can watch our documentary that aired over the weekend titled What Remains. It highlights the history of 2 historic corridors while exploring the issues that the community is facing today as some try to maintain what was. You can watch that special on KXAN's YouTube channel or on KXAN.com. Just search for What Remains under the Black History Month tab.
Live look outside this morning, cloudy but quite mild compared to where we've been. Temperatures in the 50s as you're walking out the door this morning. It will be much colder once we get behind this cold front, which moves in tonight. We'll talk more about those impacts coming up in your first warning forecast. Well, the state of Texas is turning to innovators to keep up with the growing need for water. KXAN's Eric Hendrickson went to Manor for an in-depth look at one solution.
What looks like a normal cup of water didn't come from a pipe or a well, but from the air itself.
This is where the air filters are. It'll pass through the evaporator.
Eric Shang and his brother Brian are the co-founders of Aquaria.
Our family is from an area in China called the Land of 1,000 Springs, right? It's actually very much like Texas.
With water on the mind, they developed the HydroPack system.
There's 39 billion gallons of water in the atmosphere around us. And so our machine is actually sucking in air first, and then we're lowering the atmospheric air into its dew point and then capturing that water.
The water goes through 6 layers of filtration before it reaches the tap. 1 layer of air filtration, followed by 5 layers of water filtration.
This, as the smallest size, is about 70 gallons a day.
This unit, which requires electricity, costs about 10 grand. Pulling water from the air isn't a novel concept. Scientists like Weihua Yu from the University of Texas have explored using polymer-like gels.
This actually is very easily accessible and extremely scalable and extremely also low-cost material to start with.
While hydrogels don't require power, they are smaller than the HydroPack machines. However,
fairly cold this morning, so we're not really going to be making water when the dew point is below freezing.
And in drier regions, they can't produce as much water. Currently, the device has been sold in several states, mostly along the Gulf, with less than a dozen operating in Texas. Aquaria expects their commercial model to ship within the next 2 months. In Manor, Texas, Eric Hendrickson, KXAN News.
Governor Greg Abbott made improving water stability one of his top goals this legislative session. The governor wants to expand the Texas Water Fund. Utilities and communities can use that money to improve their water infrastructure. Taking a closer look here, a company from Austin is working on its own effort to deal with water supply by controlling the weather. Rainwater Tech uses towers in drought-stricken areas. And here's how it works. When clouds roll in, the towers release ionized particles into the air. Those particles supercharge the atmosphere. Smaller raindrops in the clouds attach to the particles, helping them grow larger, fall, and reach the ground. We should note the technology needs a cloud to create the rain, and they have been doing cloud seeding forever. We've been trying to control the weather forever. We just are not able to do it on a large scale. They have not been able to do that.
So can taking moisture from the air and creating water, can that impact anything? I mean, is that water in the air important for anything else, or?
Yeah, I mean, everything's connected. You know, the atmosphere and the ocean are connected, and I think there is kind of a moral argument too.
Interesting.
A lot of people thinking, you know, you're kind of messing with what is a natural process for our Earth, trying to maintain, you know, homeostasis, maintain balance. So,
but in the end, I mean, look, we drill into the Earth, we take minerals, and so
we do. It's a slippery slope. There's no doubt about it. A lot of controversy surrounding that.
We know we need water.
Yes. Let me show you what's going on with your forecast here. Clouds and radar indicating quite a bit of cloud cover over the entire state. Cold fronts already in parts of the panhandle. This is that Arctic blast we've been warning you about. Look at the temperature up in Amarillo, 16 degrees. That cold air, it's on its way to us. It'll be here by tonight. Live look outside. Kreitz Market camera there, Lockhart. Much different start today compared to yesterday. Yesterday, clear skies, cold temperatures. This morning, we've got cloudy skies, mild temperatures, much higher humidity. We will be watching for some spots of fog and drizzle this morning. I'm going to put in a 30% chance of some spottier showers for the rest of today. I think we'll actually get full-blown showers this afternoon, but a high of 65. That probably will come early to mid-afternoon. Temperatures plummet behind this cold front. So we're going to be looking at a much different evening compared to what we've got out there now. But the skies are going to be interesting because I do anticipate this rain to come before the cold front, but there's some drier, colder air behind it. So once this cold front starts to pass us, already in the hill country by early afternoon, but through the area for the Austin area for, I would say, mid-evening is a good bet here. You'll notice that the rain disappears, the clouds stay. Could we see a couple little sleet pellets follow? Yes, but not seeing anything in the way of accumulating ice here. It's really going to be the cold temperatures that follow this cold front. Here's what I mean. Your forecast wind chills. I mean, by the time this front reaches the hill country 4 p.m., you're noticing those wind chills are already sub-freezing, and they get much, much worse as that Arctic air continues to spill south. Here's what it's going to feel like tomorrow morning. Single digits and teens, some of us even close to 0 out in the hill country. So there is a cold weather advisory in place just because, I mean, with that kind of cold, we are going to be wanting to stress protecting pipes, plants, people, pets. All of that needs to be done before you go to work this morning, because if you come home this evening, we're already going to be battling some of those cold temperatures. So the cold weather advisory starts midnight tonight, continues until noontime tomorrow. The temperatures get even colder as we get into tomorrow night. So an extreme cold watch is in effect late tomorrow night through Thursday. This will likely be an extreme cold warning by the time we get there, just because we're looking at a low temperature of 20 degrees. That matches the coldest we've been so far this season by the time we hit Thursday morning. That being said, although we don't anticipate, falling ice in any of that frozen variety, we'll have to watch for any leftover water on the roads from today's rain tomorrow morning, and then again Saturday morning, as we could see a few more scattered showers here late Friday into Saturday. Temperatures in the 60s today, down to the 40s tomorrow afternoon and Thursday. A very slow recovery with the numbers, with 60s and 70s expected by the time we hit Sunday, Monday. And obviously those temperatures, we're looking at a few widespread freezes. Let me take you out east. Parts of New York digging out from a winter storm this morning. More than a dozen crashes on I-90 just west of Albany happened yesterday. That highway was completely covered with a layer of snow. You can see there's some icy conditions, but the exact cause of that crash not known yet, but obviously probably weather related. And take a look at this video of a flooded football field in Kentucky. The University of the Cumberland's football stadium completely underwater. Kentucky spent President's Day recovering from this major storm, which unfortunately took the lives of 12 people. They are still doing search and rescue efforts this morning. And unfortunately, they've got snow on the way coming in the next 2 days. Erica?
All right, thank you so much, Kristen. Some Central Texans are working to end reckless behavior to save lives in their communities. This push for change, it's coming after a deadly crash over the weekend moved neighbors in Cedar Park to speak up about dangerous driving where they live. We told you about this yesterday. Just before midnight on Saturday, a 19-year-old died in a crash off of 183 and Scottsdale Drive. Police say 2 speeding vehicles going over 100 miles per hour crashed, possibly racing. KXAN's Jayla Washington gives us some perspective of these concerns and insight into crashes in the area.
Right along this high-traffic road in Cedar Park,
would you say that car is doing kind of to?
Homes with families who say they see speeders far too often.
Everybody complains about this street. I mean, my kid is not allowed to play with soccer balls. I'm afraid that if he runs the street, he will get hit.
Yuri Casteller's ring camera caught some of the speeding. In a different incident late Saturday, Cedar Park police say a 19-year-old died in a crash when 2 vehicles possibly racing were driving over 100 miles per hour near 183 and Scottsdale Road. One of those vehicles tried to pass the other, revved up to 140 miles per hour, lost control and struck the guardrail, according to police.
A car completely mangled. We are constantly hearing the racing of motorcycles, cars, trucks. It's a little nerve-wracking when you hear it all the time.
TxDOT data shows since 2020, there have been at least 70 crashes on this stretch of road between Crystal Falls Parkway and East New Hope Drive in Cedar Park. 4 of those ended in serious injuries. Casteller says she's been working towards solutions with some of her neighbors and law enforcement, but hasn't had much luck so far. Jayla Washington, KXAN News.
The Cedar Park Police Department says 19-year-old Jacob Langford lost his life in Saturday's crash. The department says its highway enforcement unit is investigating. It did not have a comment on speeding concerns at this time. Do you remember this video from February of 2023? It shows cars driving recklessly, doing donuts, and other cars blocked off the intersection. This was right there at South Lamar and Barton Springs, a very busy intersection. Multiple people were arrested. Some people were injured. After this, the Department of Public Safety and local agencies launched the Street Takeover Task Force to crack down on reckless drivers. Governor Greg Abbott signed new rules into law after events in several parts of the state. The measure created a new section of the criminal code for obstructing streets and made it possible for more severe punishment for those involved. Another law allows for immediate removal and impounding of vehicles involved in street takeovers and street racing.
This is KXAN Sports, brought to you by Thomas J. Henry.
Home opener tonight for Texas baseball. Jim Schlossnagel's home debut for the Longhorns after they won 2 out of 3 in Arlington. Of course, on Friday night, they lost their 10th straight in the tournament, and then they bounced back and get 2 in a row. Luke Harrison, the win over Ole Miss. He's the SEC Pitcher of the Week. Yeah, a lot of smiles on Saturday and Sunday for Schloss. They beat up on Ole Miss, then they beat up on Oklahoma State. Adrian Rodriguez, the co-freshman of the week. And now not only do they win that championship, get a couple of quality wins, but Schloss and the coaching staff with more information heading into this week.
Really proud of them. We certainly, after playing 3 games in this environment against these teams, we know a lot more about our team than we knew on Thursday. And when you play good teams, they really expose you. So that's good. Sometimes if you play bad teams, then it may be false confidence. So there's a lot of things we can take out of this positively.
High school basketball playoffs begin for the boys. Stony Point made it to the state finals last year. This year, they're in the football format, Division I, Division II, taking on Dripping Springs in a 6A D2 by-district game. Stony so aggressive on defense. Jaden Cruz with the steal and the flush. They jump out to a big lead on Drip. Stone Patterson working hard here just to try to free himself up, and he gets one off the glass. But again, Stony Point, the ball movement here to perfection. And finally, it is Landon Short knocking down the jumper. They win easily to advance to the area round. They'll play the winner of tonight's game between San Antonio Churchill and San Antonio Sotomayor. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Roger. Coming up, how state lawmakers want to keep you and your mental health safe in the world of artificial intelligence. If you're listening on the KXAN Today podcast, thanks so much for joining us. We hope you can join us for that story on air and many more stories on KXAN.com.